Welcome. It is the 24th of January, and here is the twice monthly update for the end of January. So, Lake Lanier is currently sitting at about 5.5 feet low. That'll probably come up a little bit, given the fact that we're about to get a bunch of rain once it finally thaws back into water. The water temps at 45 to 51. I expect those to drop over the next 7 days. We're probably going to be sustained in the mid 40s, I would say, with the projected lows and highs that we have moving forward. So the chance of a shad kill is not completely out of the woods with the forecasted that we have. So that could be something that comes into play later on. Water clarity is currently clear as a bell on the main lake and in the mouths of the main creeks on the south end, increasing stained as you go back in the main creeks. However, those are all still heavily, very, very fishable, and by January terms could arguably be argued that are still clear. And then there's increasing stain going up both of the main river channels left from the heavy rain we had about a week ago. As far as the last week goes, this week was pretty tough overall for numbers. I had one really good day and a couple days where I caught some good fish, but not a lot of numbers. The takeaway is, and this is kind of developed starting last week and working through this week, is to be persistent and confident in what you're doing. It's not so much a matter of if you're going to get bit, but really what it's turned out is when and then how many are you going to get bit there, because a common thing has been I've only gotten bit in one or two places over the course of an entire day fishing. I found fish in probably 75 to 90% of the places I've stopped, but for whatever reason, they just would not bite. So I've kind of adopted the mentality of, instead of waiting on individual fish to bite, is I'm going to go put my bait in front of as many groups of fish as I possibly can, with the belief that more often than not, I'm going to stumble into one of those schools that is going to fire, and then I'll end up having a good day. So as far as what has been working, I've fished the upper end of the lake. I have fished the lower end of the lake. I had a good day on both sides, and I've had some struggle days on both sides. The 2.8 in basic shad patterns on a 3/8 ounce head has still been my best producer overall. Still picking up a couple on a spoon when they're directly under the boat, and then a shaky head is still producing as well when I'm wanting to focus on a little bit shallower fish. The other thing that I started doing this week is throwing and I'm going to focus a little bit more on this, is throwing a small finesse jig. So this is a 1/2 ounce tungsten jig from, I believe it is Kitech. So it's a 1/2 ounce tungsten football jig from Kitech, and it's tipped with a cut down 4.5 inch Nova from Cast, and that is the Spice Pumpkin color, and I just cut it down and make it as a trailer. The reason being is this makes a very small, compact, edible type deal for bass on the bottom. And where I am throwing this is that with the water temps cooling down, I've kind of backed out of some of the ditches where the fish have been on the clean bottom, and I found some on the edge of the timber, and that's why I'm throwing this. This will get through up and over limbs in tree tops and tree stumps laying on the bottom, that a 2.8 on a ball head or some sort of that nature is just going to hang up. I'm able to pull this up and over all those and get it in the areas where some of those fish are hunkered down in that cover and get them to bite. As far as the setup goes, nothing crazy. 12-pound Spro fluorocarbon combined with a 7-foot medium heavy fast casting rod. This is a physics, so it's extremely light, it's extremely sensitive, which comes into play when you're trying to detect bites in 40, 50, 55 feet deep with water. And then really it's just a very slow drag across the bottom. I'm not doing anything crazy. Slow drag, feeling it go up and over the trash that's on the bottom, for lack of a better way to put it. And if I feel like I'm going to get hung up, then I can just go to the backside and pop it free. I really want to feel that spongy feeling rather than a hard stop for a fish. Generally speaking, they're more spongy feeling. As far as a hook set goes, this is one of the very few times that I do believe in crossing a fish's eyelids, and I will absolutely do that. to get the hook in. However, with this finesse jig, it doesn't require quite as much because it has a much thinner gauged hook. This is not like your typical flipping jig that has, you know, a heavy wire hook. This is a light to medium wire hook, and it's on the bottom. Half ounce is not necessarily required. A 3/8 could arguably be better in some situations. However, that's going to be a little bit harder for some people to actually feel the bottom, but it's going to have a slower rate of fall, which may actually work. If you get shallower than 20 feet of water, going down to a 1/4 ounce is even a good idea because it has a very slow, subtle fall. There's not a lot of stuff moving super fast right now. And I think with the temperatures being in the extreme, your presentation being in extreme, either very fast, and that's, you know, triggers a reactionary bite. So think about, you know, speed cranking is a big thing in some areas this time of the year, and that's triggering a reactionary bite. I kind of go the opposite with a lot of my presentations where I go very slow, and I'm just trying to keep it in front of the fish in the strike zone and get them to actually trigger the feed. So that's kind of my philosophy on that. As far as colors go, green pumpkins with some blues in them, green pumpkins with maybe a little bit of orange in them, and then the old tried and true peanut butter and jelly are always good. As far as the trailer goes, it's cold water. You don't need, you know, a massive trailer with, you know, massive floppy things. I kind of, you know, scale it down a little bit and just have it a little bit more compact deal. That is my technique as far as what I go. Moving forward, we're going to have colder water. If we end up with a shad kill, it's going to be very difficult, but you could also hit pockets of really good fishing in the shad kill. But that will also, while the actual shad kill is going on, just because there's going to be so much dead bait, the fish will be gorging on them. And if you get on the edges of it, you can probably trigger one. But then again, it's also kind of a thing, too much of a good thing can come into play as far as that goes. So that might get a little tricky. But hey, we're days are getting longer. We're 6 weeks away from the calendar start of legit full-blown pre-spawn, which is kind of thought of as March. It could happen earlier if we get a warmer than average February. I know it doesn't seem like that's going to happen, but that is a possibility when you look at some of the really long forecasts. So some things to think about right now while you're stuck in the house over the next few days. Go ahead and start looking at what baits you want to throw in the springtime and stocking up on them. For example, the spot sticker mini-me spinner baits in the best colors and weights seem to sell out in March and April. So now is a good time to buy those. The sand colored worms, which I'm a big fan of on Lake Lanier, sell out in the springtime. There's plenty to be had right now if you go look around. Let's say some of the lighter jig heads, like maybe the 1/8 ounce jig heads and the 1/4 ounce spot chokers. Those are not really moving a whole lot right now, but those will come into big time play as we get closer into the spawn. Cincos in your favorite electric shad or whatever color Cinco you're having, and then the trickster tamales in the green pumpkin green and the sweet baby candy. Now is the time to stock up on those. Because as we get into the spring, they're going to become a heck of a lot harder to find. And particularly with those soft plastics, you can blow through 1, 2, 3 bags of those in a day on the water in the spring. So stock up on those now if you have the ability to do it, so that you're not having to look for that stuff come springtime. And then once spring hits, then we're going to start looking at summer. So anywhere between 3 months and 6 months ahead of time is where I'm trying to buy things that I know I'm going to need. The other thing as far as springtime goes is your favorite nail weight, like a 1/16 or a 3/64. Those can get really difficult to find come the springtime because so many people are Nico rigging for spawning fish and pre-spawning fish that those get very difficult to find, particularly the tungsten ones. So I personally made an order last week, got a whole bunch in, probably 15 more packs of those. So those are staged and ready to go, and hopefully I won't run out. So there's something to think about while you're sitting around the house dealing with the ice apocalypse that is upon us, and we'll see how it happens. So hopefully this helps you guys out some. If you have any questions, please put them in the comment section. If not, I'll see you again here in about 2 weeks. And yes, the question is coming about settings on my sonar units. I am going to do that, but I want to film that when the temperature is above freezing and the wind is not blowing 30 miles an hour so you can actually hear what I'm saying. So those days are coming. Good fishing weather is upon us, and I will see you soon. Thank you.